All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're doing a highly analytical, incredibly precise breakdown of some ancient legal derivations. And what's so cool about this is that we're going to move from a microscopic grammatical detail, literally something you might just gloss right over on a page, all the way to a sweeping debate about property rights, divided ownership, and legal liability. We're going to see exactly how ancient scholars acted like master detectives, picking apart texts to uncover some really profound layers of legal meaning.
So, let's kick things off with a massive question. Can a sweeping legal mandate actually hinge on just one tiny, seemingly insignificant word? I mean, when we read contracts today, we know every comma, every preposition matters, right? But how did that work in ancient legal traditions? Can a huge financial or physical obligation be totally transformed by a word as small as the?
Part 1. The 3 priestly gifts. Okay, so the text outlines an ancient rule requiring an Israelite to give 3 very specific, distinct anatomical gifts from a sacrificed animal directly to the priests. This was basically a mandatory contribution, kind of like a societal tax that supported the priestly class. Every time a non-sacred animal was prepared for food, the owner had a strict liability to separate out the foreleg, the jaw, and the maw, which, by the way, is just the animal's stomach. Now, on the surface, this looks like a super straightforward butcher's list, right? You've got an arm, a head part, and a digestive organ. But ancient legal scholars definitely did not just accept this at face value.
Which brings us to Part 2, the power of a word.
To figure out exactly what was owed, these ancient legal scholars acted like textual detectives, deeply analyzing the syntax and the grammar. If you look closely at the phrasing in the original text, you'll see the law doesn't just ask for a foreleg, a jaw, or a maw. No, it specifically uses the definite article. It demands the foreleg, the jaw, and the maw. Now, to an untrained eye, sure, that might just seem like a stylistic choice. But in highly analytical legal texts, there is literally no filler. Every single word has a job to do. So the absolutely crucial point here is that this single word, the, legally restricts and at the same time expands the definition of these animal parts. A definite article points to something very specific and important. By saying the law is basically saying it doesn't just want any random leg or some standard stomach. It is legally mandating the absolute most important prime version of that specific anatomical part, along with everything legally attached to it. Because of that one little word, the law specifies that the foreleg actually means the right foreleg, which was traditionally viewed as the stronger, more important limb. The jaw is legally expanded to include the incredibly valuable wool on the head of lambs and the hair in the beard of goats. That means the original owner was liable to give up that valuable wool as part of the gift. And the maw, well, that legally includes all the rich, valuable fat surrounding and inside it. So a single definite article vastly expanded both the liability of the owner and the actual physical property given to the priest. And actually, that specific inclusion of the wool opens up a massive, highly analytical legal debate.
Let's get into Part 3, retaining the wool.
This expansion of liability when it comes to the wool leads us to a really complex question about property rights. Just imagine a scenario where someone decides to sell their sheep to a buyer, but they legally retain the rights to the wool for themselves. They've essentially divided the ownership of the animal. So now, one person owns the physical body of the sheep, while the original owner retains the rights to its absolute primary product, the wool.
This setup forces a profound analytical question. Does the liability follow the animal itself, or does it follow the specific product? Like, if the original owner kept the rights to the wool, are they still liable for the priestly gift of the first shearing, even though they literally don't own the sheep anymore? Or does the new owner of the sheep just absorb that tax?
Part 4, Torah law versus rabbinic decree.
To resolve this, scholars had to clearly define the levels of ancient law at play. They had to ask whether the prohibition against keeping the gift in this specific divided ownership scenario is a fundamental Torah law, meaning it's derived directly from the primary biblical text, or if it's a rabbinic decree being an additional layer of protective legislation enacted by later scholars specifically to prevent loopholes.
When we actually map out this liability, the distinction becomes absolutely crucial. Under a strict Torah law interpretation, the liability might rest entirely with the person who physically owns the animal at the exact time of the shearing. But under a rabbinic decree, which is designed specifically to safeguard the whole system, the original owner who retained the rights to the wool remains completely liable for the gift. They bear the liability precisely because they kept the rights to the exact item that's being taxed.
And that brings us to Part 5,
the final verdict on liability.
Ultimately, the analytical breakdown shows us that divided ownership doesn't just magically erase the obligation. Retaining the rights to the wool means retaining the liability for the first shearing. The law ensures that clever legal maneuvering, like selling the physical asset but keeping its most profitable output, simply cannot be used to bypass fundamental societal obligations and taxes.
So the crucial point I want to leave you with today is this. The next time you encounter a highly specific, seemingly arbitrary rule about divided assets or some really complex legal wording, don't just write it off as bureaucracy. Ask yourself, who really owns the liability here? What loopholes is this law actively trying to close? Thanks for exploring this fascinating anatomy of a law with me. Keep asking those questions and always keep looking for the logic hidden right beneath the surface.